As Taxi is wont to do, we've got a good story with fun characters that are engaging, but they forgot to write jokes.
I'll just say congratulations and good luck, and remember, you haven't lost a daughter. You've gained a ton.
He wasn't very funny.
Up to this point, Taxi has been at its best when it balances character work with comedy. This episode leans much harder into character, especially with Alex. And while that mostly works, it comes at the expense of laughs. It's a strong story, a likable performance, and one of the quieter episodes of the season so far, for better and for worse. So if you're coming into this episode expecting a big laugh count, you're probably going to be disappointed. If you're open to a more grounded, character-driven Taxi story, this one has a lot going for it. Well, with that in mind, welcome back to The Rank. I'm John, and today we're going to be ranking the third episode of the third season of Taxi, titled Fathers of the Bride, written by Barry Kemp and directed by James Burrows. So let's see how this one stacks up, starting with the episode overview. We open the episode with Tony talking to Bobby about how monotonous and boring his life has become. And Bobby's like, yeah, I feel that way sometimes too. It's depressing. But Tony didn't mean that it was depressing. He was thinking he had it made. So a silly start to the episode that has nothing to do with the plot of the episode. That comes next when Alex shows up and Louie asks him about his daughter. Now at first Alex is like, she's fine, haven't heard from her in a while, but then is wondering why Louie would ask him a normal human question. Of course, Louie gets offended by this insinuation that he doesn't ever ask normal questions and says it's a two-way street, Rieger. So Alex asks him if he's still having his cockroach problem. And he is. And he kills one while talking about it. Now the fun part here is that Louie tells the cockroach to stop fighting back and then tells Jim that the cockroach looked like him. To which Jim replies, thanks boss. But Louie's gonna persist in the daughter line of questioning to Alex. And when Alex puts up his guard, Louie's like, look, I'm trying to break something to you gently. Louie's convinced that what he knows is going to break Alex's heart. So Alex is like, well then out with it, Louie. But Louie wants to be gentle and he says it's either my way or no way. Of course, Elaine is gonna be like, he doesn't know anything. Don't let him get to you. But Alex is pretty sure he actually does know something. And Louie's gonna tell Elaine that she should stick around, unlike Tony, who he kicked out, because Alex is gonna need her ample bosom to cry on. So then the Band-Aid gets ripped off. Alex's daughter is getting married, and Alex didn't know about it. Now the thing Louie wanted to know from Alex before he told him this was how old his daughter was before his wife left him, and she was 2. And so after Louie tells him about this wedding, he looks back at Elaine and says, all right, take care of him, honey. Now how does Louie know about this? Well, he read it in the paper. You raise a kid, give them 2 of your best years, and they wind up forgetting about you. That's why you're better off raising tomatoes. At least you can eat them. At least that's what Louie's mom says. Now, Alex is clearly upset, but Elaine is ever the optimist. Maybe it was a foul up in the mail. Rio de Janeiro to New York? Do you know how far that is? Well, Jim does. He says 6,842 miles. And then they sort of ignore that, and Elaine says to Alex, I mean, do you know what kind of mail system Brazil has? I mean, intimating that it's probably not good. Again, trying to be optimistic. Jim responds again, though. The Brazilian mail system is government run with a budget of 27 million. And then he says the currency type that I don't remember and definitely was not right. Unless maybe it was back then. I don't know. I know that now it's the Brazilian real. And at this point, Elaine is like, how do you know these things? But Jim goes, you mean I'm right? So they move on, and Elaine is trying to convince Alex to call his daughter. And he's like, do you know how much it costs to call Brazil? And then they look at Jim, and he's like, well, you went to the well too many times. But he decides to call. And when he's calling, Louie comes out from his cage saying he's found it in another paper now too. And according to this paper, after the young couple finishes their honeymoon in the Orient, they'll return home to their estate in Majorca, a gift to them from the father of the bride. Uh-oh. But of course, Tony being Tony says, wow, that's a great gift, Alex. Back to the phone call, and Alex asks for his daughter. And then, not getting her, asks for his ex-wife. The guy on the other end is clearly telling him to wait, because he's like, please don't make me wait too long, because he's calling from New York on a middle-class income. Kind of crazy how much has changed in 40 plus years. There's no way that anyone now would think that a taxi driver is making a middle-class income anymore, which is kind of messed up. Either way, he finds out that it was his ex-wife, Phyllis, who kept him from coming, saying that he shouldn't be invited. Alex is super pissed and yelling into the phone. And what he's yelling into the phone is that he's he's not yelling. And when the phone call's over, he says he's going to the wedding regardless. And Elaine's gonna be like, you did the right thing. And then she's gonna invite herself along. So we're gonna cut to the reception. There's a bouncer of sorts saying that Alex isn't on the list and won't let him and Elaine in. But Elaine's gonna use her feminine wiles to get them past the guy. Now, I did enjoy that the guy says there's a 1,000,000 to 1 chance that he ever sees Elaine again, but he's gonna take it. Once they're in, Alex is wondering why Phyllis did this to him. I mean, she lives for confrontations. And Elaine's gonna tell Alex that she assumed the reason they broke up was because Alex couldn't commit to being a husband and father, to which Alex is appalled. Although I feel like we addressed that in the pilot episode, and he admitted that he wasn't a good father, but whatever. Alex is gonna see his ex Phyllis standing over there and make a joke about how she's gained a bunch of weight, which is just, I don't know. I suppose I can forgive it because what she did is way worse. But it felt weird. Now his daughter's gonna come up to him and be excited to see him and wonder why he wasn't closer at the wedding. So now we know that his daughter did want him. It was really just Phyllis. But I really liked Alex in this episode for one big reason. And it starts happening here. He could have thrown Phyllis under the bus, but he doesn't. He keeps it to himself. I found that incredibly likable. After that though, Alex is gonna confront Phyllis, and he's also gonna meet Phyllis's husband for the first time. Now Phyllis and Alex are gonna argue a bit, and then Phyllis is gonna meet Elaine and make some jokes about cabbies. And finally, Alex is gonna be like, how come I wasn't invited? And she just goes, I didn't want you here. And he's just like, oh, but he's gonna get the last laugh because he's gonna make a joke about her weight. Remember, you're not losing a daughter, you're gaining a ton. And then she gets upset and walks away. I mean, you know, it's not a great joke. Also, Phyllis, you're kind of a shithead for not inviting him in the first place. I don't really feel for you here. Naturally, of course, his daughter's gonna come up to him and ask him, where's my mom? And she seems upset. She also mentions that she thinks Phyllis was nervous about seeing Alex after having gained weight, that Alex would say something about it. But no, that's crazy. He would never do that. But now Alex knows he needs to make things right. So he's gonna try to cut in on the dance that Phyllis and her husband are having. And she's like, don't let him, he looks like a bad dancer. But Alex insists and her husband relents. Then he tries to pull Phyllis into another room to talk. But she says, you get your hands off me or I'll charge you for half this wedding. But eventually she agrees to go. And they walk into the biggest janitor's closet ever. I mean, this was like a mansion that they were using for mops. And at first things aren't going well. But eventually they begin to reminisce and align. What do they reminisce and align about? Sex. Apparently she's not getting good sex anymore. And they always had great chemistry in that department. Then she basically tries to bang him in the giant janitor's closet. This was a really weird turn. Like, I get that they were trying to make things better between them, but why did it need to turn into this? Of course, while she's got her leg up on him, the daughter is calling to them and walks in. Before she gets within eyesight though, Alex has gotten Phyllis's leg off him. And the daughter's gonna be like, this is the best gift I could have ever received, to see you two together. And Alex is like, 5 minutes later and you would have had a better gift. Now I would think it would have been a worse gift, Alex, but I get it, I get the joke. But the daughter's gonna be like, I wanna see you guys hug. So they do, and Phyllis puts her leg up on Alex again, which is ha ha ha. And Alex is gonna be like, come on, let's get back to the wedding reception. And they do. And that's the whole episode, so let's find out how it ranked.
A rank.
So the rank is where I rank the episode based on 5 categories: story, acting, dialogue, episode coherence, and character relatability. I rank it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. And then I have a laugh counter where I tally up the amount of times the episode made me laugh. 1 point per laugh out loud gets added to the score. But before I dive into the rankings, I just want to say if you're enjoying this episode, please leave a like down below. It really does help me out. But without further ado, the first category is story. I thought this was actually a pretty good story. Maybe a little too heavy at times, but a good arc to it. Alex finds out his daughter is getting married and he hasn't been invited, but he's determined to be there anyway and tries to make it an enjoyable experience for his daughter, not just himself. Good story. I gave it a 4.5. And that brings us to acting, and the acting was really good. I thought Danny DeVito playing concern for Alex earnestly was great. I think Judd Hirsch was excellent in this episode, especially expressing his anger. Mary Lou was fine, but she didn't have much to work off of. The seduction thing was weird. Anyway, I gave it a 4.25. And that brings us to dialogue. And this is where the episode just didn't hit hard enough. There were definitely jokes in this episode, but they just didn't work that well. It was like, sometimes you would think, oh, that's cute, but it wasn't a laugh. Still though, the story was engaging, so some credit for that. I gave it a 3. That brings us to episode coherence. I think that they try to make Alex too much of a saint. I mean, I get that the fat joke was mean and that he had to come back from that, but really, compared to what his ex did by refusing to let him be invited to his daughter's wedding, even though the daughter wanted him there, is just astronomically worse. And he just fixes everything and generally makes everything better. Hell, even his ex is trying to jump him at the end. It's just, if he was so good, why did she leave him in the first place? And why didn't he put in an effort to be a good father? So the episode itself definitely coheres and it's all good, but that aspect of character coherence doesn't work as well for me. I gave it a 4.25. So that brings us to character relatability. I think everyone's really relatable here. Elaine wants to help a friend and also selfishly wants to get some free food and drink at a wedding. Phyllis doesn't want her ex to be there, which is egregious but relatable. Alex is determined to be there. It's all very good. I gave it a 4.5. All right, so we have some fairly decent rankings, only one that's even slightly low, which is dialogue. So if it has a decent laugh counter, it should definitely be in the top 3 tiers. Unfortunately though, it only got me 8 times, which means it puts the total at a 28.5, which puts it in the tier mediocre. And as for the series average, it's at a 26.69, which means the series as a whole is still in mediocre. And if you're ranking along with me, drop your score for this one in the comments. But thanks for listening and or watching. Check out my other Taxi episodes or any of my other sitcom ranking or movie ranking episodes on this channel. Remember to subscribe, comment, and like. For up-to-date rankings, check out my website at therankedpodcast.com, where you can also email me at john@therankedpodcast.com. And if you really want to support the show, you can become a patron at patreon.com/therankedpodcast, but I will leave you with this. Alex almost caused such a disturbance at the wedding that they almost called him the bother of the bride.
Move this man!
And just so you know, once again, that came from Zach, so you can be angry at him.
You tell him to stop! Stop him!
As Taxi is wont to do,
Cut!
up to this point, Taxi has been
Cut!
at its best when combining.
Cut!
Take 3.
Up to this point, Taxi has been at its best. Fucking motherfucker. Here we go.